you.
We're looking at. This one's a little bit more expensive, but covers everything we need, plus all the hard work. This is just for information. I'm going to try to see if I can put this into the budget for next year. But this is an information packet only. Next thing is a timeline for the insurance handouts. Insurance proposals. We're going out for 3 different proposals for brokerage services. One for a health broker. That person basically handles questions from the employees. They also work with the retirees to help them find insurances in the contract. And also act as a go-between between claims and the employee. The second RFP will be for a stop-loss broker. Stop-loss is our reinsurance on our self-insurance. That's basically one separate policy. They have to work with the stop-loss company and make sure we get paid for any specifics over 60,000 in the aggregate. And then the third broker would be liability workers' comp. That's basically our total package. Last time we talked about this, we do 3 different RFPs. Right now we have separate brokers on each of them. Looking to put the RFP out for a 5-year contract with a 120-day cancellation after 3 years. We should get good numbers on that. I want to send out the RFPs on November 26th with the due date of December 17th. We'll then look at it and make sure everyone that responded meets the qualifications, and present them in the January finance meeting. I do not have dates for those because after the organization, the meeting dates ought to be set. Prepare in January and February to have extra meetings where we'll have the people that met the qualifications, and after our January finance committee meeting, who we want to come in and actually interview, because besides price, I'm sure they're all coming in about the same amount, but they also have to promise the moon and the service. We have to feel comfortable with them. So we'll do the interviews, and in the March timeframe, the Finance Committee should make a recommendation to the board, and the board meeting in March will have board approval naming the brokers. That gives them time to take over as of July 1st and go out for the quotes and negotiate with the insurance companies. Most insurance companies will not give quotes prior to 60 days the policy renews or starts. So that gives them plenty of time to do that. Any questions on the RFP process or timelines we would like to move up, or everyone's fine with this? Okay. When I finish the actual RFPs, I'll send you copies, but I plan to send them out. I'll let them be available to have any companies already that are interested. And once they go out, we'll probably hear from others. The transition timeline with TD Bank. What a plan is to have a resolution authorizing the use and of opening accounts at TD Bank this month. Plan to notify the vendors of the change, which is IRS, the state, vendors that automatically take out, like when we do our taxes, PSERS, those places. Also notify pays of change. It's going to take several months to get a PDE, the food nutrition, the government programs that deposit directly in their account to switch their accounting, and also request checks from TD. They said that would take about a week, but still want to have them there. As the transition happens, it'll probably be January, March, it will be giving the board both check runs from Chunk and TD until we make sure everything's covered and we don't have payments in limbo anywhere. And then in April, we look at closing the accounts in Chunk. I did give you some of the attachments, the cash management master agreement from your review, the agreement for third-party ACH services. But that will have a resolution on the board this month authorizing us to move forward questions on timeline or questions on using TD Bank or? Yes, sir.
I got a question. So on the TD Bank switchover, you're going to save approximately 300 or generate about $300,000 a year, right? A couple $100,000 a year.
Yeah, we're going to generate about 150,000 more in interest than we are now.
And how much are we generating now?
80, 90, is it right now?
So
last year was 60, but this year we're at 1%.
No, we're actually more than 1%. We're 1.16.
1.16.
So
it's probably 120 to 150,000.
And how many mills does that equal?
I think you are hit on the spot. It's a third of a mil.
Okay, so can we give that third of the mill back to the people since we saved that money rather than, we already are not projected for an increase, we're not projected.
I would love to say that, but we also have salary increases and things we need to cover.
Well, you're currently projected as a budget shortfall of about $1 million a year for the last couple of years,
Right.
and going forward until 20 plus 20 something, right?
Right.
You have about $16 million in the bank.
No.
How much do you have in the bank?
We're going to end up with, at the end of this year, about
$4 million?
Correct.
Okay, so the interest on that $4 million is generating this value?
Correct. And it's not the interest on the 4 million, it's interest from the beginning of the year when we have made 14 million down to 4 million.
So if we,
And that 4 million is actually would be zero, but there's bills that are paid out of that over the next 2 months.
but if you give that back to the people
Right.
that are currently financially strapped to prevent them from losing their home or moving,
Right.
and those people that are seniors on fixed incomes have no burden to the district. We don't add a burden. If you
Then
don't give them a
cover
relief.
increased costs.
Are you saying that we're going to have a tax increase?
No, I'm saying how you got to cover increased costs. We have
I thought we were going to reduce.
salary increases, we have gas increases, we have everything in the world, there's an inflation going on.
Right.
Now you got to cover the salary increases.
I thought the whole idea was to reduce the amount of cost the school generates because you have.
Without raising taxes, not without lowering taxes.
Well, I want to lower them.
You want to lower them.
I'd like to lower them this small amount.
You need to cut expenses to cover that then.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the question is, after
So
reviewing,
that's something that the board have to decide where you want to cut.
Finance Committee
Right.
recommends to the board financial events.
Right.
So if the Finance Committee recognizes where we can cut costs, and the number one space to cut the cost is employment,
Employment, correct.
correct. So how many people do you have to remove or reduce or restructure to cover that?
120, probably two.
No, you're looking at the $1.2 million that we're supposed to be saving on that elementary center.
Right, and that's how, we.
It was a bit through attrition.
Costs. And through attrition, correct.
Right, so we're supposed to be losing employees through attrition.
Right.
So when are they come? My question to you is,
We
finance.
also had increased wages.
So number one, the question is, we should give back the interest we generated. It was found money by managing our finances better, so that the people and the stakeholders in the district should reap the rewards of our good decision making. And it solidifies them in the marketplace so they don't leave. And these are people that don't carry a burden to our district.
Right, but isn't.
So there's a value to that.
We're reaping the rewards when you're not raising taxes, even though you're increasing your expenses.
You're not increasing your expenses,
Oh, we are increasing our expenses because.
not by generating more revenue from our cash.
Right, we're covering the expenses.
Those dollars,
Taxes.
but those dollars should go right back to the people. They should get the Lehighton School District should be the first one in the.
I know what you're saying, but on 11, 12 million or $15 million of salaries, 3% increase, what are we talking?
What we're talking about saving,
600.
you're talking about saving people's houses.
Right.
And these people don't have kids in the district.
Mhm.
Every house you save through that process does not burden the district, but maintains our,
Okay, so we're talking, what, $15?
I don't, everything, yes. It's a reduction. But the key is it's a reduction. So once they see that the school district cares about them, which it hasn't in the past.
We have been caring about them by not raising taxes where everyone else in the
But Mr. Fike, let's be real.
No, I'm being.
I'm being very real.
Everyone else in the state's been raising taxes. We have been maintaining the same level of services and actually increasing services and not raising taxes.
But think about it. How did that happen?
By being smart with the money.
No, they raised the taxes. No, they raised the taxes.
When I got an additional $45,000 a year in rental at the middle school to cover other expenses, are you saying we should go out and get more money to come in and lower taxes? But
correct.
You're the one that's saying we shouldn't be charging people.
So two sides of it.
Right.
The first side is that the taxes were increased so much, so aggressively, prior to these dates you're talking about, that the district had $16 million in excess funds sitting in account, at which point you bought a stadium for close to $8 million, and you spent money. Right. So all of that money, and one year there was a $3.7 million surplus in the annual budget. So when the district, not you specifically, but when the district was taxing these people at a rate that was higher than what was consumed or needed, they built a nest egg within the district. And rather than give it back at the time and keep the people in this district, the gentrification took place, at which point seniors moved out. You got a lot of vacant properties that are not paying the taxes. And you have this excess tax base that you're bleeding from, your general fund, to make the budget meet. Because like you said, you didn't take in any more money and you spent more money. But it's the pre-tax dollars, the David Krause years and the Bowman years, that raised those taxes so high that you had these surpluses. That's what you're feeding off of. That's going to end.
Yeah, it is going to end.
Well, it's our board's responsibility.
Everyone, even Social Security gets increases every year. You're saying that employees shouldn't get increases?
I'm saying that you got to reduce. You have to reduce.
Good generalizations to try to paint a picture that he's trying to paint.
And it's true. We had an overtaxation and we collected $16 million.
What's your opinion?
What's your opinion, Mr. Spencer?
I gave it to you.
What was
You're
that?
Speaking in very general terms to paint a picture that you'd like to paint.
Wait, what picture am I painting?
You're trying to paint a picture that people were overtaxed years ago.
Correct. And what are you trying to say? They were not? Then where did the $16 million come from?
Came from, again, a variety of sources.
You're saying the district financially?
I'm not going to argue with you.
There is no argument.
Because
you have $16 million in the bank. Where did it come from?
It differs from my view, and that's the facts.
Show me where the $16 million came from.
Again, he's speaking great generalization.
Not generalization, very specific. $16 million. Where did it come from? You're the board. You're a board member. You're a director. Where did it come from?
A variety of sources.
Which ones? Name the sources of income that this district comes from. It comes from state tax money. It comes from real estate tax money.
Continue on.
Not continue on. I'm asking a question of my board. What's your answer, Mr. Genser, on this financial committee? Insight. Where did the $16 million come from, sir?
There you go. You'll get the tape that you want here. And fantastic.
And where did it come from, though? I'm trying to save these people.
Again,
you should save these people. We should care about these people.
There are people who care about them, and I wish you would also.
I do. The point is, if you don't keep them in your district, they're the ones that are not using the resources of this district.
Again.
Mr. Flake, we had asked this question before. How many people actually lost their house because they couldn't pay their taxes in this district in recent years? Because I know from my experience, people lose their house because they can't pay their mortgage. The mortgage company will come after you long before the school district and the county do. So do you have any numbers as to how many people actually...
Since I've been here, we have not foreclosed on a single-family owner-occupied residence.
Okay, that's what I thought.
What happens... Wait a second.
We have foreclosed on rental properties, but not on owner-occupied residents. And we've worked with people that, they couldn't pay their taxes because they also had high medical bills. We did not kick them out of the house. Everyone says, oh, they lose their houses because they can't pay taxes. It's not the case, at least not in Lehighton. Maybe it is in other places in Carbon County. But, you know, we do not foreclose on people that can't pay their taxes. Now, we have taken houses or foreclosed on sheriff's sale on commercial businesses, landlords that, you know, take the income in and do not pay their taxes.
But the commercial properties that,
Pardon?
the commercial properties that foreclosed,
Right.
don't hire our workers.
That's not the people you're talking about. That's not your person on Social Security that's trying to maintain their house.
That's the person hiring those people.
That's the person that's taking income off the property and not wanting to pay taxes.
But the foreclosure, before they foreclose, the process of foreclosure means the person is going to lose all of their equity in that home.
They lose a home, that's what.
Yeah, they lose all of it.
And we don't do that for residential owner occupied.
So how many people, Rita, have ever said that there's equity left in their home, and before they don't pay the tax, that they really can't even sell the thing, that they don't at least sell it for something to take the equity out, pay the tax, and then leave? So the question, I'll make sure you understand. If a person is going to lose their home, let's pretend they have $20,000 of equity in their home. They can't afford the cash flow to meet the tax burden that has been over increasing.
Never had that experience, never.
So they don't want to sell the house.
Never had that.
No one ever said, I'm going to sell the house and move to Florida where cheaper taxes.
Oh, yeah, but not in lieu of foreclosure. No, I mean, not
In
that they
lieu
were
of
getting
what?
foreclosed on, they moved to Florida because they wanted to go to the sunshine.
Correct. So there's also a function of
If it's correct, why are you arguing with me?
the question is, prior to the foreclosure, they were smart
There was no
enough,
foreclosure.
before they decided they couldn't afford to stay here anymore, they chose to move. They voted with their feet. They sold their house to get out from under the burden.
Again, you have no proof to this. You have no proof.
It's a mass exodus here in the state of Pennsylvania, guys. If you don't control the
You have
cost.
yet to tell me where you taught. You have yet to tell me what boards you sat on. You have yet to point out the school code that you keep referencing in certain things. And now you want me to just buy this when I know from experience, no one I know has ever lost their home to taxes. That's what I know. You can say why people decided to move, I don't know. But the fact is they didn't lose their house to taxes, and you got to stop that.
It's not unusual. There's about 1,100 properties listed for tax sale, and these are not foreclosures. These are property tax sales due to non-payment of property taxes, 1,100 there in one county alone.
Gentrification, that's not possible. Schools are built because of gentrification. They are not the cause of it, and I dare you to find me an article that says they are. And that's the end of my dissertation. And
Okay.
thank you.
So you're saying it's the cart before the horse?
I'm not talking anymore. That's it. I'm done.
You're on the board. We're asking a question. Where does $16 million come from then?
I wasn't on the board then.
Okay, so you don't know?
Variety of sources.
I know, but do you know what they are?
Do you?
Yes. Did you look into it?
Did you?
Yes.
What are they?
Okay, so if you go to the bond document, you can look at every year's P&L statement, which is how much money comes in from taxes, right? And how much goes out to run the school. And when they had an excess, they didn't lower the taxes.
No,
They raised them. They raised them. When they had a surplus, Rita, they had a surplus budget and they raised the taxes. At which point they had more of a surplus and more, to the point where the state...
I'll tell you what, I'll go check into it. And
you can. Mr. Fike, at what point did the district get a note saying that you have too much in your general fund by the state and you either have to consume it or remove it by giving it back to the people or reduce your taxes so that they can consume it because you can't have that high of a general fund? What year?
I have no idea because it wasn't when I was here and I've been here almost 5 years.
Right, so...
But when I came here, the first thing I did is looked at the plan. The plan was to build a stadium, and the next thing I looked at is, okay, we do have too high of a fund balance. Let's do a 5-year plan, bring it down to where it should be, and let's bring it down to minimize that we don't have to raise taxes, and also that we don't have to raise taxes at a jump. If you look back in 2001, 2002, I think they lowered the millage by 2.5 mils, and then the following, or 2 mils 1 year and a half mil the next year, and the following year they raised it 2.5 mils. The following year they raised it 3 mils. The following year they raised it. It took them forever just to get back because they didn't look in the long term
But was it a controlling of the cost or just the ability to go take the money from the taxpayer? You have a consumption problem in this district. That's the problem.
I don't think it's a consumption problem. I think we have a number of employees, a number of services. We want to keep moving. We don't want to drop programs, but if you want to drop programs, we can cut costs. If that's what you want to do.
I think the stakeholders have a right to decide.
Oh, yeah.
I think the stakeholders have a right to decide whether or not they're going to provide X services to their own children. And they should know what they are that they're providing, and they should know what...
But isn't that what they hired or elected the board for?
No. They elected the board to listen to them, to execute their plan.
To execute the plan.
Correct.
Which is what you're here doing, and that's what the other 8 members of the board have to decide.
But I don't think these other 8 members of the board understand that their responsibility is to listen to the stakeholders and decide.
You stop telling me, please, can we go on with this meeting? He has taken enough time with his...
It's your meeting.
Would anyone else like to comment on?
Yes, anybody else have something to say?
I'd like the board to make I'd like the finance committee, let me be specific. I'd like the finance committee to make a recommendation to the board to give this found savings back to the people so that they can understand that we are a board that's going to look after them to try to keep them in our district rather than consume them.
And I disagree.
Okay? And Mr. Yenser, can you help with that?
No, because again, Mr. Fike explained very well what the cost savings is going to, and it's to offset the other expenses that we see during the course of a year.
When he does the budget for the year, all those
Mr.
things
Bells,
get
would you
taken
like to
into
comment?
account.
I don't have a comment right now.
Okay.
I think Mr. Pike has done a great job with finance, and I agree with him. It's not at the point where we're going to really make a difference giving that money back.
We're controlling our costs.
And if we're going into negotiations for the teacher salaries, and that's going to eat up some money. So
Who's on the negotiation committee?
I'm not.
I don't know.
You are? And who else is?
I really don't remember at this point.
When's the next meeting?
There, when negotiations start, there is no set time for negotiations.
When was the last meeting?
Well, I don't know, I wasn't on the board for the last time. It's only done every 3 to 5 years whenever there's a contract.
So there's been no negotiation meeting.
Not that I'm worried.
No, there
Is that correct?
shouldn't be, only when negotiations are happening.
Probably what will happen is the teachers union will come to us this spring or sometime late winter to start. They're not due to 2020, June 30th of 2020. They usually like to start a year and a half ahead of time.
And how many employees do we currently have between the union and non-union?
Full-time, 270, I believe, somewhere around there.
And how many part-time?
25 to 30.
And how many did we have 2 years ago?
288 full-time, 25 to 30 part-time.
Okay, so how many are we losing in the next 2 years, either due to attrition or to get the savings we're looking for in this? Because you just opened up the school this year.
Right now, we're to where I think we should be. The problem that we're going to have to look at is we've actually increased in number of students this year from families moving in and buying houses.
Whose houses are they buying, right? The people that can't afford it. And that's what I'm trying to say. If you can stop that gap.
Someone's buying it. Right now, we're 65 students more than we were last year at the same time.
Right.
So there's more students, there's probably going to be more services. We're going to have to eat it this year, but next year that'll increase our state aid because they do per student or per pupil spending.
Well, so we saw books on the floor at the lockers. So we don't have enough lockers in the current elementary center to handle these new kids that are coming in.
No, we have enough lockers, they're just in the wrong places, and we're actually moving them and installing them.
Install them somewhere, okay.
Yeah.
So the number of kids,
They've been sitting down in the basement, but our people had to put bases underneath because they don't want to let the metal on the floor.
so we're not going to get the attrition we were looking for.
I think we're getting the attrition, but we're also going to have increased state aid because
So
we have no.
How many people are we losing because we have this elementary center? It's supposed to be $1.2 million, $850 million, or $850,000
Right.
was through attrition of salaries.
Correct.
So who were they?
They're already gone.
They're gone. When did they go? You only opened up the
This past
school.
year, we had 6 or 7 people retire already,
And they're not replaced.
not replaced.
And how many more can we get rid of?
Not sure because I haven't finished the budget.
Has anybody reviewed the actual task list and employee as a relationship from finances to decide whether or not we have more or less human resources applied to a problem and the results of
What
it.
side you want to be. You know,
What's
I
that?
know we've reviewed it, I think we have the correct number right now. You know,
Who makes that decision?
the superintendent, the curriculum department,
But the board does not get involved in that?
they get involved in the budget, they'll have to get involved with it for this.
And they get involved with every
But
hire?
what you're saying right now is that budget's already been approved and the hire's been approved.
But there's
Hopefully
no,
next year, which is a different story.
but the finance committee, these guys, there's no oversight to decide whether or
There is
not.
an oversight. When I give them the budget in December is when we start getting into the meats and bounds. I give you a budget saying, this is what we have now to maintain everything, this is what it's gonna cost us, here are the revenues I project, you know, do you wanna cut services, do you wanna lower
Well,
taxes?
or just make the services more efficient. If you have does anybody check to see whether or not the employees you have are actually creating a value to a student?
Every year,
And how?
every year it's evaluated.
Who does that evaluation?
Superintendent and director of curriculum.
But does the board oversee that process?
How would
Absolutely,
you know?
when we
How
ask.
would you know if it's
Just
correct
because
or
you
not?
haven't seen it before doesn't mean it didn't happen.
I want to say, did it happen?
You have a case of believing that something hasn't happened if you haven't seen it.
Thank you. So has it happened?
Yes.
Who had it? Who done it? Did you do it?
Anyone who asked to, absolutely. I was-
Okay, so when you did it, what documentation did you keep? Tell me what's the right to know I need to file to prove and see what you're saying was done.
You believe everything's written down on paper.
Should be,
It's
yes.
reviewed with us.
So you reviewed it in a meeting, public or private?
I call one-on-one to the superintendent and the business manager all the time.
Private or public meeting is these things taking place? This evaluation of these teachers.
Publicly, we vote on everyone who's hired and fired in this.
You said that you reviewed what the superintendent does.
Yes.
Okay, and you said you did it in a
Recommendations
meeting.
to us in the overall
You said you
numbers.
did it in a meeting.
No, see,
Was the meeting done in private or in public?
it was in public.
Yeah, you're on the spot,
It was in
bud.
public.
You're on the spot.
That's
You're
fine.
on the
It's in
spot.
You're on the spot.
sir.
Yeah.
You are on the spot.
Fantastic.
It's all
That's
public.
enough.
I'm accountable to those stakeholders.
You are an audience member at this committee meeting. So
And he
that's
asked for
what you're
questions,
trying to
I'm asking questions. Are you telling me I'm not allowed to ask these questions?
do. Yeah, right now you are, because this is the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 18th, 23rd time you're asking. You get the same answer, you don't like it, you keep it up.
I'm looking for an accountable answer, Ms.
Okay,
Spinelli.
well, you keep looking then, okay?
Because you don't have an accountable answer? Is that why I gotta keep looking?
No, you keep looking, you'll find it. Just
Okay,
keep
that's what I'm
looking.
asking. So, Mr.
Rewind,
Genser,
rewind.
I'm holding you, Mr.
Rewind the
Genser.
tape. No.
You said you had a meeting
I'm not.
in relationship to the
directly.
employees.
I will say, Mr. Fike, you gave us solid numbers
I
as to
gave
where
all the
they,
backup to the budget, the people, the count, the numbers, the names.
Thank you.
positions
And I remember
of
seeing them, I
everyone
remember
that
looking
was
at them with their
included in
salaries.
budget, what they're doing,
Yes.
what their salaries were, and that's what you'll get in December once we have the next finance meeting.
Thank you.
That's the first, and I don't have.
And so then who checks that? Hold on, you give them a value.
No.
It's very simple. You give them a
Mr.
value.
Belz, do you have any other comments to this current discussion? Because we're not going anywhere.
So you give them a piece of paper that says, this is a person, I'm business manager, X dollars,
I give them.
Mr.
full
Belz,
Work 40
budget.
hours.
do you have any other
Backup.
further
Right.
open
it
discussion?
works 40 hours. And then you give every employee in this district.
Question right now, I think we need to listen to this.
As long as this is the end of the question, if he brings it up again, it's not ongoing.
Absolutely
It's
not, Ms. Benelli.
It's harassing.
It's not
Finish
harassing.
your question.
The
Finish
question-
your question.
The question is, simply, when you give a list of employees
Correct.
and their job titles
And their job titles.
and their amount that they get paid,
Right, and it even has their step and where they sit on the ladder, or they're even in their
Perfect.
position. You know, what their budget they're being charged to, if it's regular ed, if it's special ed, if it's ELL, if it's, you know, I keep them going on, everyone has.
and what confirmation says that that employee is accomplishing a task for the benefit of a student.
Confirmation is that I also go through metrics and make sure every teacher has a certain number of courses, that we don't have a teacher not teaching the same as everyone else. So if that, you know, now, it's up to the board to decide, do they have enough kids in that class or not? But now every student in every class is the same size, which before we didn't have that. We had schools that had 30 kids in one class and the same grade. Another class might have had 8 or 10. You know, and you and I have gone over that before
Yeah.
with the Jericho group, and you know, it's now even, so we know every teacher has a class to teach, and we know the number of classes they teach. And it pops up if someone is short, and that's the question I bring to curriculum, you know, why doesn't this person have enough, you know, teaching these classes, and we find out, okay, they're also doing special, which doesn't come up on the
And it's a function of how many aides we have?
well, it also is a function of what they're teaching.
Okay.
You know, if they're teaching a special ed class that's needy, they might only have 3 or 4 kids in a class.
Which is
You're right.
very reasonable.
Aides are not every teacher has an aide. Most teachers that have aides are supposed to special ed.
So we have a teacher to student ratio that gets reviewed.
Correct.
But does anyone look at how that's applied and whether or not that task is accomplishing the result that you're aiming for?
That I will play dumb accountant, you have to talk to curriculum law.
Right, but once that goes through, the only one responsible.
I know that my metrics, those teachers all are assigned to something.
Right,
Okay, and that's what I'm basing my budget off, because I'm an accountant, I'm a bean accountant, I look at the best value for the buck, but when it comes to, are they teaching the right courses, you know, that is someone that's, you know, out of my league, and I'm not gonna try to,
I'm talking about we had a superintendent in this district that was working from his house and getting paid.
right, for 3 months.
Correct, and the auditor caught it and said, you can't do that. The auditor caught it, not the board.
And the state auditors come in, they check to make sure you know, we have so many teachers, they also check to make sure that the teachers are being evaluated, they're also checking to make sure the students are being evaluated. We also check to make sure the students are getting the education they're supposed to, their IEPs, the regular ed students, you know, we also have testing, you know, a lot of that.
But that's the state level. But my point is, this board didn't find it, the board didn't do it, and it's their responsibility to do it. So they gotta have.
I know what you're saying, but I'm gonna put it, that was before me.
I understand that, and that's not the point. The point is that the board has a responsibility to not only decide and see how many teachers we're gonna hire, and how many aides, and how many grass cutters, or whether or not we're gonna have.
And that will come up when we start the budget cycle.
It should come up way before the budget cycle. That should be an ongoing process. If we're not maximizing our human resources inside the district, that is your largest expense. By far. Only followed by those same individuals' pensions. And insurance is the second largest.
Over 70%, personnel and benefits over 70%.
Correct. So even if you had a 10% change in that value, it would mean people don't have to move. It would mean you don't have to have more people buy those houses that have kids that need to fill up that school, so they end up needing to buy another one because you managed your resources. I don't see this district, and the proof in the past was the audit reports and other things that have happened, that says somebody in this district is double checking the work of the administration, which is the board, like they're supposed to be. And I think we're getting lip service, like what Mr. Yenter's saying. Oh yeah, I talked to a guy, or I met somebody, or I talked to somebody. I don't think any of it's actually documented. I don't think you have any shadowing.
Correct, you don't think any of it's happening.
I don't think any of it's happening. If you could prove that it is, I'd listen to it.
That's fine.
Show it to me. I've asked. We can't find it, Mr. Yenser.
Of course.
Why can't we find it, Mr. Yenser?
When are you going to answer all my questions that I've
Why can't we find it?
When are you going to answer all
Whenever
the
you
things
want.
I've asked? Okay, but it's been months.
Thank you.
You say that every
So-
time I ask you, and you say, I'll get it to you, so where is it?
What would you,
You need to send me a resume, you need to tell me where you taught, and you need to pick the school cutout that says I am personally responsible for all the bills. You need to give me that. I've asked for it months and months and months.
okay, and
And yet you don't give it. You
Thank
say, I'll get it to you.
person. I'm not gonna give it to you.
Okay.
There you go. Now, the school code, I'll give you that one. But you should be able to read. And if you did, you would know where it is.
And I found it, but it didn't say
So,
what you said.
back to-
And
back to the question.
I want you to show me what you said. Dave, this
Back
is
to-
neither here
No,
nor there.
you have a job to do. If you're not doing the job, the people in this audience, like myself, a citizen, has to hold you accountable to that job.
Yes, yes, I'm a citizen.
He's telling me he's meeting with people. I want to know whether it's a private meeting or a public meeting.
Public meeting.
Okay, so what public meeting did you record these minutes that you said and talked about
They're all
these employees?
recorded. They're minutes.
And
Ask for
they're
them.
all finance, the budget.
I asked for,
Just
Hold
because
on.
you think you can't find them doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
but, okay, so you're saying the meetings, are you on the personnel committee?
No.
Are you on the personnel committee?
I am.
Do you have a personnel committee meeting? Have you had any?
No, those come up when there's a problem.
Okay, and then you have a meeting, well, the personnel committee. And where do you have that meeting?
I don't know.
Is it announced?
The last one we had here as a meeting, the one that Larry, just 2 weeks ago, wasn't that the one we had here? When you were here, when we were going over JJ's,
That's an executive session.
yeah, for
And
personnel.
For his superintendent's contract.
Right.
That was supposed to be done in August 31st.
Oh, well, okay, yeah.
That Larry had a special meeting
You asked me when the last one was, that was it.
and none other before that.
No.
And you have, and that, since you've been on the board, you have no policy meetings. You never went,
Policy, yeah, lots of policy.
how about personnel meetings? None.
Because there's no,
You didn't go to them or they didn't have them?
I don't know. Maybe they had one and I didn't go. I don't know.
Okay. If you had a personnel committee meeting, would it be public or private?
Well, depending on the subject matter, it would have to be private. It's personnel.
So how many people would be in that meeting if it was private?
Well, they could call a meeting and 20,000 people could show up, but they couldn't stay here because it would be closed for executive session because it's personnel.
So then the entire board would be in that meeting.
I don't know. I don't know.
How do you not know this?
How do you not know this?
I do know.
Okay,
A personnel committee meeting
right.
is called. Cleaver called one. He invited you to it. He told you to show up in his back door.
No, he didn't.
Okay. And then he said to come to his meeting for the personnel, at which point he held the meeting. I asked for the minutes of the meeting to our right to know officer, who says they don't exist. And then excluded them, saying they're considered an executive session, but only executive session can be of the board as a whole. So you got a conflict here.
No, see, you haven't read that correctly. Special meetings are special meetings, Dave.
Go ahead. And special meetings are required to be either public or executive sessions. And if they're ever an executive session, correct me if I'm wrong, they have to be announced at the next general meeting that one occurred and when it occurred.
Okay, but this is a policy. This is a committee meeting.
A personnel meeting, right.
This is a committee meeting here.
Yes.
It's a finance committee meeting.
Announced.
Yeah. It's
Open to the public.
It's, yeah.
So we can hold you
But
accountable.
Personnel wouldn't be.
Why not?
Because you don't have the right to spread some life out all over the paper and on your camera. It's personnel.
Do you have employee numbers in this district?
That's not going to help you with the problem, Dave.
You do have employee numbers in the district, correct?
I'm done.
Is that why you're not doing it?
I'm done.
Your circus has started?
Done.
Okay, so back to the finance. How are you going to reduce the expenditures if you're showing a negative budget and 70% of your, 78% you said? Is personnel?
70%.
Over 70% is personnel. What is your plan as the finance committee to recommend to your board as to a method to reduce those costs to bring your expenditure below your income?
My philosophy is...
Because right now your expenditure is higher than your
This
income.
is a service organization. It's not manufacturing. Our product are the children we produce and the children we teach. Our teachers are our resources, our raw materials that develop that product. That is the most important thing. I have no intention of cutting the services for the people for which we are a service organization. If you think I'm going to go cut teachers, you're crazy. We need more, not less. We're doing the best we can with what we have, and that's my philosophy. Yours is different, that's fine. This is the Lehighton Area School District, not the Lehighton Area Taxpayers Association. So if you'd like to fight in Harrisburg or you'd like to go and start an association, be my guest. This is a school district. I care about the teachers, I care about the kids, and I'm not cutting them.
Everybody agrees that we care about the kids and the teachers. However, if you are spending more money than you have, spending more money than you're taking in, you only have two choices. Either you cut through austerity, or you ask for more, correct?
Dave, I told you I'm done.
What direction are you gonna do? What's your plan? Are you gonna cut?
I have no plan, Dave, you know that, I have no plan, I'm just stupid, I'm a stooge, I'm a puppet, I can't read. Let's see what else.
I'm gonna get a drink of water
this
while you
week.
keep rambling. Keep going, I love it. Keep ranting, I'm gonna get a drink of water, sorry.
Anything else for open discussion?
Anybody else while he's drinking water?
Okay.
That was it. Excuse me.
No, you were drinking water, you took a pause.
I had to get a drink of water.
No more
I was getting-
questions, that was your last question.
Why is that? Why are you telling me I can't ask a question?
Because you
Can
can't.
we maintain a
Yeah, I'm asking.
civil meeting here? Thank you. Mr. Fike, do you have anything else for our finance committee meeting?
No, except the next finance meeting, once the dates are determined, I plan to have the budget, and we'll start the budget discussions then. It's probably a good forum to continue this discussion.
Did you go over your scanning issue?
Yeah.
Mr. Fike, or Mr. Belts,
Did you go over your scanning issue? I got a question for that, sorry.
further open discussion? Then what we've
So-
covered already?
So the question for the scanning question is, inside of that proposal, it made mention that there's a certain number of hours consumed by the administration for us to be able to collect the data and take pictures. I'm the one that does that. And it's listed as how many hours in that proposal.
I'll go back.
It's close to 15 a month.
Correct.
So the question is, since I know I don't consume that many, is there someone else taking pictures?
Yeah, wherever you want those bills are copied, we're getting copies from the other offices. We still have to put the stuff.
So that time is a function of preparing those bills
Correct.
for review.
Correct.
Okay. And normally before that, before I started asking for all the backups,
Oh, before you do it, I spend probably 5-6 hours going through to make sure I'm not giving you something that's gonna be copied that has a name on or, you know.
Correct.
Private health information or whatever.
but the collection of that pile, is that the same pile you've always created for the last 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
And the board members have an opportunity to review that pile?
Correct.
All right, so there's no change in
No
that
change,
process?
But this would be it's actually the change would be putting on site, putting on the website.
Correct, to have
that we
access.
talked about. It's not just making your pictures here, or the time you take a couple, 4 or 5 hours, whatever it takes you.
Right.
It's also making sure everything's brought into files that can be uploaded and the public can see, and, that it's managing the database.
That human resource. So
Right.
the question is, what's the return on the investment for that process? How much money will the district save over a year providing those services to the taxpayer and to the community?
I don't think there'd be any savings, but it's giving an additional service to the taxpayer. It's actually gonna be a cost, it's not a savings.
But you're gonna save hours and time.
I don't know if we're saving hours of time.
You're saving a lot of time. If you're putting it directly from
Extension, that's an extra 15 hours a month,
minimum,
right? Which we don't have to do right now.
correct, so you'll save that.
Except, what?
So that's 15 hours.
If we don't scan them and put them on the site, we'll save that.
Say that again?
If we don't scan them and put them on the site for public view, we'll save 15 hours. If we do that, it's gonna cost us 15 hours.
If you put them on the public site, you're gonna save 15 hours according to that report.
No, that's the time it takes to do all that stuff.
Currently, but you're not gonna have to do that
We aren't
now.
doing that currently. We're not putting it on public site currently.
Read the report sentence again, if you don't mind. I think you're confusing it.
Now, I think what you're saying, this is what it would cost for the time to be taken.
About the first paragraph halfway through. To pull it up on the email you gave me. I'll read the sentence. The packet is then reviewed by board members before a meeting. One board member takes pictures and requires the business administration to sit for approximately 10 to 15 hours a month and review the approved packets.
Well, that's incorrect. As we know.
Thank you. So my question is simple.
Right
If
now-
we have a proposal that someone gave us
Right.
that's incorrect, who corrects them prior to reviewing this proposal? It's obviously wrong.
Right.
Mistake, conspiracy, lie, incompetence, whatever. Somebody wrote that report, and it's a mistake. Who corrects these things? Is it just a board member that reads it?
No, I go back and correct it with them, but there's no cost benefit analysis here. This is just,
I saw that. That's why I'm asking for one. Do we have one?
no.
Why not? If we're going to ask the board to...
Because this is the second proposal, I have one that's cheaper that I gave you before.
Whichever one you want.
For another one, then once I get all three, I'll evaluate them. Once I decide which is the best, then I'll do a cost benefit analysis, but I don't waste my time.
Until you get one that you're going to use.
Correct.
Okay. So the point is that before the board is asked to either spend money,
Right.
they should get a cost benefit analysis. We agree with that.
Yeah.
And
Right,
it
so
would
I
be,
get
it would be
the
unwise
proposal.
to make a decision without that cost benefit analysis.
Right.
Excellent. Do we do that same process for the 78% of our expenditure, which is the human resource?
They get everything they need to decide that. The superintendents then sell someone who they need for next year's.
Do we get a
teaching
cost benefit analysis of that decision to either hire a new employee, extend the hours of an employee, or reduce the hours of an employee in exchange for the services that may or may not be needed anymore or
That
provided?
you have to take up with curriculum.
I know that. And I understand. My question to the business manager and my finance department is whether or not the board is provided with information to do a cost benefit analysis of the decision that the board is then going to be asked to make at a board meeting in public with the pertinent documentation required by our policy to give to those people so that they can inform us of the decision that they want their district to go into. It's not Mr. Bradley wants to reduce things.
The board gets that information.
It does not since I've been on the board. We do not have a cost benefit analysis
No,
of the
I said they get
employee.
the information, the finance committee, like I said.
I know, that's fine.
Gets all the information and then they have to get justification.
I'd like this
from-
financial committee, I'd like the finance committee to recommend to the financial department and our administration that we should have a services benefit for each and every person we either choose to hire or extend the hours of or reduce the hours of. Because we don't want to allow a pie-in-the-sky person to make those decisions without the input of those stakeholders that need those services. They should have that right, Ms. Spinelli. And I'm trying to fight for their right to do that because this board has not done that since I've been
I think
here.
this board hasn't done that.
I know this board has not done
I think
that.
this board has.
In the last 8 months, it has not done that. So the question becomes, you're telling me it has done that. I'd like you to show me a meeting, minutes, or anything that shows that that occurred. Because I see us hiring grass cutters, and then we buy new grass cutting equipment. I see us hiring extra staff to wipe down tables instead of just maybe extending an hour of somebody that needs to be there. I see us adding new employees, right? Mr. Stern stood up here and said that he's worked here, his kids have worked here.
You've never asked the question. That's what I see as the problem.
I'm asking it of the finance committee now, sir. What are you going to do? Make the recommendation or not make the recommendation? I'm asking you the question to make the recommendation that this district should get a services or cost benefit analysis prior to every hire and prior to every expenditure. Because we should decide and see a value to do we change to LEDs or do we stay in incandescents? Do you change to a heat pump or do you change to a boiler? Do you add 2 more special needs teachers or do we add 2 more gym teachers or 2 more maintenance people? Someone has to make those decisions and you don't want your superintendent those decisions. The code doesn't want that. Those people don't want that. They want a check and a balance in the system so that the services are provided to those students. And teachers,
would like the superintendent to make those recommendations to the board for us to hire, because again, they're the professionals in the education world as a board member.
and correct, and we agree with that.
That's the process that's been followed, and that's the process I will.
But that recommendation should come with, hold on, just like Mr. Fike is a great business manager, he shows up with a cost benefit analysis for that expenditure. Mr. Cleaver should also, with his recommendation, provide that cost services analysis. Because when there's a decision between do you hire a teacher, which I greatly respect, and they need to do, and us teachers, by the way, when they are teachers, they have a certain value to the system. To not allow a teacher to do their job is wrong. Let the teachers do their job. If they need more teachers, we need to give them more teachers. Certified, qualified teachers. And when we have a teacher that's not so good, that may or may not have violated these policies and rules, they need to be removed from the system, because it's our job to provide those people, the stakeholders, with the best that this district can afford. That they choose to give us the money to buy.
Which has
That's
happened.
It has not happened since I've been here.
You don't believe it has happened?
Since I've been here, it has not happened.
Again, your opinion.
No, it's you can prove it.
Rita has hers,
He's great.
Rich has hers, Gail has hers.
Are you done?
Are you?
Is that it?
Are you done?
I'm finished. Do we have any more open discussion? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second?
Thank you.